Fox News Alert, and it is a big vote today on Capitol Hill. We've been talking about it. House Republicans planning to take up their version of tax reform today. They are meeting with the President of the United States right now. He's gone to the Hill. He's counting on Congress to get a critical legislative victory by the end of 2017. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here today, co-host of After the Bell on Fox Business, Melissa Francis, former deputy spokesperson for the Department of State, Marie Harf, host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy herself, today's hashtag One Lucky Guy. A first-timer here with all of us, former CIA officer and radio host Buck Sexton is here. You're outnumbered, but you sat down, you said you feel right at home.
Indeed, thank you, lady. I'm very, very comfortable on the couch. Great show you do here.
Well, welcome to our house.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Let's move to the news. The House, speaking of which, expected to vote on tax reform today. President Trump is on Capitol Hill right now meeting with House Republicans. GOP leaders are confident they have the votes to pass their tax bill. Here's House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
You're going to lower rates, eliminate the alternative minimum tax, close loopholes, and have more money in the individual's pockets. I think you got to be strong enough to defend that and move forward, and on the long run, you win.
Not everyone's on board. It is politics, after all. At issue, the plan in the House is to erase tax deductions for state and local income and to cap local property tax deductions at $10,000. Representatives from high-tax states like New York and New Jersey are not thrilled with it. Their no votes likely would not be enough, though, to stop the bill from going forward. Congressman Peter King of New York says the legislation could hurt them in the midterms.
This would give ammunition to Democrats to use against us. It will be unfair because we are leading the fight against it. But it puts us on defense. We're going into a campaign. We're going to be on defense because of an issue raised by our own party. And that's the self-inflicted wound.
All right, we want to bring you this breaking news. So we have been following Senator Menendez in New Jersey, who is up on 18 counts, including bribery and fraud and a whole host of them. The jury is deadlocked right now. They are stuck. And this is after they were deadlocked last week. A juror left on a long-time planned vacation, and they replaced that person, and they're still deadlocked. Why is this important politically? Let's bring it out to the couch. So, Buck, where we are is the Democrats don't want to lose a voice among their senators at a critical time, and it looks like maybe Menendez would not be able to participate in some important votes if he's still up after like more than 35 days this case has gone on in New Jersey courts.
Well, also, if he were to be convicted, which obviously right now looks like a coin toss given how long the deliberations have already gone on in the jury, then the Democrats would be forced to reckon with, are they going to remove a sitting U.S. senator from office, who would at that point be a convicted felon, which would also have the added political reality of Chris Christie is still the governor of New Jersey, and so
but
he would
not
be able
for
to.
Long.
Well, that's exactly the point, though. So he would be able to appoint somebody in the interim, and they don't want that to happen, and so they're looking to maybe hold out until a new governor is in fact
because the
seated.
new Democratic governor of New Jersey will take office early next year, and if Menendez can hold out, I think they will keep him in the Senate.
The trial's been going for more than 35 days.
I think they'll keep him in the Senate so a Democrat can appoint his successor.
If he gets a retrial, which looks like it's a distinct possibility, politically that would be great for the Democrats at least.
Well into 2018. I would bring this up too because I think this is interesting. So that juror who left because he or she had a long-term, I don't know why I'm even trying to hide the identity. My point is that juror gave an interview.
Yes.
So that's how we know who this person is and what this person said. And the context of it was, I think Menendez is innocent from this juror who left. We know that they were having some problems coming to. The judge had given them some extra time. We've wakened many a day to, will this be the day? And this won't be the day. They're deadlocked.
It won't. And what was so interesting about what she said was it's the take that a lot of people have out there, and it kind of brings you to all the other corruption scandals we're looking at, whether it's Hillary Clinton or anyone else, where how do you prove pay for play? You know, I mean, this juror came out and said, it sounded like they were friends, and they were doing things because they were friends. So, to me, this isn't something that, he's guilty about, but there are people in there who say he's for sure guilty. And it's just that it really reminds you of that gray area in a lot of people's minds when you heard her talk as just a regular person with no sort of political, horse in the race.
Please forgive me. I'm looking down at my phone. It is day 38, the 8th day of verdict watch. So it isn't just that this case has gone on, Kennedy. It's been in this suspended animation for quite sometime.
Yeah, and it's like having a baby and being 8 days overdue. You just don't know when you're going to give birth.
I actually think it's more painful than that.
The Menendez trial. Perhaps it is. Well said, but interestingly, the math in the Senate is up for grabs in two very unconventional ways.
Yeah.
You know, one, you have a fraud trial where, yes, there is a sitting Republican governor who doesn't have very long until he leaves office, but you've also got the case in Alabama that we're going to discuss later in the show with Roy Moore, who so far is not dropping
might have
out
another
of
one
the
with
race.
Al Franken. Potentially could have another one with Al Franken. We don't know. Judge Walz inside that courtroom in New Jersey says he is not going to declare a mistrial right this second. He wants to interview the foreman. He said, so I thought I'd be candid with you, quoting the judge. Now, remember, there are no cameras in that courtroom, but we have our Fox News team in there, and so they're sending us notes. Your Honor, the reason it would not be futile, the jury is under the impression they need to reach a unified vote. So they're going back and forth with defense, obviously, the judge. They're having a conversation about this in the courtroom.
Do we know what they're hung up on?
Yeah, well, they need to know if they have to be unanimous on all of the counts or if they can just go partial with the verdict.
Of those 18.
That's the big back and forth right now. And I will say that post Bob McDonald, the former governor of Virginia, who was prosecuted at the federal level for way less than Menendez. I mean, Menendez there were women being flown in from overseas. There was a $90 million Medicare scam at the heart of all this that's funding all this for him.
True.
It looks really bad, and it's amazing that there's not more coverage of this in the media. But post McDonald, what is a quid pro quo? Because the standard was elevated by the Supreme Court there, and this is a case where they're kind of determining, well, what is the quid pro quo?
Right, and
exactly.
that
What's the punishment? I want to go to our reporter who's in the field, our correspondent, David Lee Miller. I've been reading you some of the notes that are coming from that team. David Lee, tell us exactly what's happening.
I left the courtroom just moments ago, Harris, and there was a note from the jury at about 11:30 this morning. The jury, in great detail, told the court that it is now deadlocked. The attorney for Robert Menendez told the court, quote, "We have a for real hung jury." The defense here is arguing that the judge should declare a mistrial. The prosecution, meanwhile, said that this new jury, and by that he means the jury that's been in place since Monday when an alternate was placed on it, has only been deliberating for 3 days, and that it's premature now to declare a mistrial. The judge was also asked by the prosecution to tell the jury that they can deliver a partial verdict. The judge said, based on the note, that doesn't seem like an instruction that would make any sense. The gap here is just too broad, too wide. There are too many disparate views. And he said essentially he was not going to order them to consider a partial verdict. At this point in time, the judge has indicated he now wants to interview the foreman of the jury to hear in the foreman's own words, apparently, that the jury is deadlocked. This is more procedural. What will likely happen then, or could happen next, is after he speaks with the foreman of the jury, the judge then may actually want to speak to the individual other 11 members of the jury, polling them, not to hear so much whether they were going to vote for an acquittal or for guilt, but to hear in their words that the jury is deadlocked. It seems increasingly likely it is moving in that direction, and what should be noted here, Harris, is this has been an 11-week trial. The jury has deliberated now for more than 30 hours. Millions of dollars has been spent, and now, if there is a mistrial, the government is going to have to decide if they are going to try Robert Menendez once again, starting from scratch. Harris?
You know, all of this fits together if you don't take into account that they were almost at the same point last week when that juror with that long-standing vacation pulled out and they replaced that person. It's interesting that even though they replaced a person who told the media that he or she thought that Menendez was innocent, you still are deadlocked. What is being said about that?
Well, we really have no idea what's happened inside the jury room. What is notable, Harris, is that on Monday, we got a note from the jury saying that they were deadlocked. The judge gave them instructions, verbally and in writing, that they should continue deliberating. Since that period of time, we've heard absolutely nothing from the jury. They did not ask for a readback of any of the testimony. They did not ask to examine any of the exhibits. The jury has been presumably deliberating, talking among themselves. How wide the gap is, we do not know. What are the issues? We do not know. But as you indicated, the juror who was dismissed last week because she had a long-planned vacation gave multiple interviews to the media saying that the jury was going to be deadlocked, and also saying that her personal view was that Robert Menendez should be acquitted. Obviously, there are others with a very different perspective. At this point in time, the senator is still in the courtroom behind me. We expect that if there is a mistrial declared, he will come out and speak. Back to you.
All right, David Lee Miller, will come back to you as the news warrants on this. We talked about the political implications. Big story right now. Here's the other one. The President of the United States is on Capitol Hill. He's meeting right now with House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. You know that they have been talking about what it takes previous to this, what it takes to get the Senate and the House versions to merge. Would love to be a fly on the wall in all of this, but there's a lot at stake today, Melissa.
Oh. There's a lot at stake. I mean, they know that they have to make this a win, however you can do it. Chopping down some of the details. If you look at, a lot of people are looking at the penalty that you pay if you don't buy Obamacare, stripping that away. 58% of the funds that are paid as penalty are paid by the bottom 50% out there. So when they say, oh, if you strip away this mandate, that's a lot of people losing their coverage. You have to wonder if all of these people were willing to pay a tax, which, remember, the Supreme Court declared that this was a tax. That's why we're allowed to talk about it in reconciliation now. But if those people believe that that was a tax and they'd rather pay it rather than going out and buying insurance that they don't want, can't use, can't afford, whatever it is, that, this seems like it could be a step in the right direction.
Senator Thune told me yesterday, Finance Committee, they met before they began their whole hashing out and finishing their Senate version. He said yesterday that there were about 6.5 million people who were in the boat that you describe. And I said, well, then where are they going to get their health insurance? And he said, no. They're opting not to have it right now.
But that's exactly right.
And the money is going through the IRS. So, yes, indeed, it's a tax.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the Supreme Court said it was a tax. And the IRS is the one that provided those numbers about who's paying the penalty.
They slide this in, Kennedy. The House is not then, they've said that they don't have this in their version that they've already put up for a vote or going to put up for a vote. But it doesn't mean in conference that they can't come back and add it.
Well, the only reason they don't have it in their version is because they thought the Senate wouldn't accept it because of the razor-thin margin and some of the issues over health care with the senators who tanked that proposal. But now that the Senate has approved turfing the mandate, the House will obviously accept it, and they're right to do it. And if this is what it took to dismantle Obamacare, why didn't they do this in the first place? Why did they waste so much time and political capital?
Why do you think they did
But the Senate bill
because
might not
they were trying to tinker with it, and they were also trying to offer an alternative. But what it does is, yes, 4 million of those people, and the estimate is between 4 and 6.5 million. You're absolutely right. The reality is those people don't want insurance.
Yeah,
they don't want insurance.
But the Senate bill also might not pass, though, guys.
Offered.
Yeah, it's too much insurance for young, healthy people.
Check the boxes that you list: affordability.
But the exchanges
to the doctors
will collapse much more quickly.
But the Senate bill also might not pass. And it might not pass because they included this provision. They are on a razor-thin margin. Ron Johnson has already come out against this.
The Senate version might not pass because
He's against it because of taxes on small
Collins,
businesses,
Murkowski,
not necessarily
and
because
others.
of the individual mandate being spared.
Well, they can only lose 2 Republicans.
And Collins and Murkowski and others are concerned about this being included. Collins has been very open about that. It may not pass.
Real quickly before we go to commercial break, I want to give our first member here the last word. And Buck, do you think that there are any Democrats with the appetite in the Senate to make up a deficit if Republicans get over the line and lose 2 people?
No, I think at this point they're all in opposition. I think that they'll view this as keeping points off the board. It doesn't really even matter what the final Republican House or Senate bill is. Democrats are going to want to oppose it because the narrative going into the beginnings of the midterm cycle will be Republicans can't get anything done in the Congress. Wow. Everything else, I think, at this point is details for Democrats.
Hanging in the balance, the American people. Anyway, moving on. More controversy in the Alabama Senate race. Roy Moore is facing even more accusers as criticism from his fellow Republicans continues to build. what to do, and whether all of this could have a lasting effect on the Republican Party. And new information on the status given to the Hillary Clinton email investigation that appears to contradict something former FBI Director James Comey said. Hillary Clinton is speaking out amid calls for a special counsel to investigate all of the issues surrounding her.
It will also send a terrible signal to our country and the world that somehow we are giving up on the kind of values that we used to live by.
New information about Hillary Clinton, her email scandal, and whether a special counsel should be assigned to investigate her.
Okay, excuse me, Melissa, that was the president, and of course he's just met with House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senator Mitch McConnell, and I'm listening. He just told everybody that the talks are going well so far. Now remember why he's there. He's basically like a presidential whipper for the votes, right? He's there to find out whether or not they've got them, and he wants to make sure that he can push this tax reform over the hump, if you will, with his motivation of being there on Capitol Hill. And so if both sides, the Senate and the House, can get together and possibly hand him something for his desk at the end of the year, that has been the rally call from the president. He wanted something before Thanksgiving from the House, and they're going to take a vote later this afternoon. He could actually get that. But can he get the total package from both sides, both chambers on the Hill, for him to sign before Christmas? That's the big question. It's always a big deal when the president puts a toe in the water to see what the temperature is. It's an even bigger deal when he makes his presence known in person. And so, well, that's an interesting shot of the floor.
It's very clean. It's very polished.
It is. It's beautiful. That's our
Custom
taxpayer
marble.
dollars
Did
at
we
work.
pay for that?
Yeah, you bet we paid for it. But we're waiting now for the president then to reemerge. So he's meeting with leaders on Capitol Hill so that, again, he can talk with them, take their temperature on where they are. Who does he need to talk to?
Is this a hidden camera prank show?
No, but who does he need to talk to, Buck, to make sure that those no's that are outstanding right now, he can maybe soften a little bit, maybe pull those over to a yes, or at least gauge, who's having a problem with certain issues like salt?
I think there are two components. Yeah, state and local, by the way, looms behind all of this, and that is a major. In the short term, I think Republicans may be thinking, oh, that's not sure. We can lose state and local because it affects mostly blue states. But longer term, I think there would be fallout from it. But in the meantime,
can I pause you right there, because I do think that people may have a different understanding. And so what you're saying is there is a long-term effect of people in high-tax states not being able to deduct their state and local taxes on their federal income. And that's what the Senate has now wiped away. That's the provision that they've wiped away. Tell us why that's important and what that long-term looks like.
Well, look, the state and local deduction has been something that's been around for a long time because a lot of the blue states that have it say that they contribute much more to the federal government than other states that are bigger recipients of federal largesse. But this is really just a political issue for the states that do have it. The representatives from them, people like Peter King, they're from states that they're Republicans, but they're from blue states, and they're going to say to themselves, hold on a second, we want to make sure this is out of it. But just on Trump and why he's speaking to everybody right now, I think that the optics of this are just that President Trump wants everyone to know that this is not on him, and the Congress has to know that it's not on him.
No.
Meaning,
The House,
wait, let me just finish.
I disagree.
Until they put something in front of him and he refuses to sign it, the criticism is on the Congress.
No, but I think
I want to go to Melissa because she's not in agreement.
Yeah,
right now.
I disagree with you that it's on him. I think that he loves the role of deal maker. I think that he really wants to roll on. You said it was on him.
No, I said it's not
on him. Okay. So
you agree?
We agree, actually.
He wants to. Well, no, I do think he'll get blamed in the long run. I don't think that's why he's out here. Let me be clear. I disagree with you that that's why he's out here and that's why he's talking. I think he's out there not because he wants to wash his hands of it, but because he wants to get in deeper and he wants to make sure a deal is done and that he's willing to make some sort of deal happen in the box that we're in between what the House has put forward and the Senate has put forward. He's happy to agree in there somewhere. I think he will take the blame if it doesn't work.
He doesn't take the blame. Absolutely not. Senate Republicans take the blame. They're the ones who are dropping the ball.
Everyone gets blamed if it doesn't work.
Because the House is going to pass it. Absolutely. The House knows they have the votes. Kevin Brady has also done an about-face on the salt deductions, and he is protecting those as much as he can. I think that there's still a deal to be made. But the point is, with the president visiting Capitol Hill, he didn't do enough of that on health care.
That's right.
And that's where he got some of the blame. He didn't do enough personal whipping. He sent Vice President Pence to do that, and it just wasn't enough. They also realize how critical that FaceTime is with the president and how much impact and influence that can have on senators who are on the fence, like Ron Johnson, because I think there's a way. Susan Collins, you can totally write her off. Someone like Ron Johnson, I think he's making a strong stand because he has specific points that he wants to negotiate, and I think there's a deal to be had there.
Yeah. Well, to Buck's point, there are 17 Republican members of the House who represent districts in California, New Jersey, or New York. 17. Democrats only need to take 24 seats back to pick up the House. And I'm not saying all of those people are going to lose. But Peter King and his colleagues from these states are very concerned about this politically. You know, the congressional nonpartisan analyst just came out earlier today with more statistics that it'll raise taxes on families making between $10,000 and $75,000 over the next decade. This just came out right before we came on air. So there are some political challenges to marrying the two versions, to even getting this over the finish line in the Senate. I also think President Trump is probably talking to Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan about the Roy Moore race. I think he has other business to do up on the Hill. That's why there's the private meeting going on.
Until the Congress presents President Trump with something to sign, and he fails to sign it, any criticism of Trump not getting, it's not really his legislative agenda in the sense that it's the legislature's. He's just pushing for it until they put something in front of him. And he goes,
hashtag ditch Mitch, that's very popular. And Mitch McConnell will get the blame for this. And that's part of this Bannon-esque campaign. It's not even nuanced. They know who Steve Bannon is. They know that the president doesn't like Mitch McConnell.
I was just going to say that going into the midterms, the narrative for Trump, absent that situation where he does not sign something put on his desk, I think it's quite clear. After the midterms, and then, by the way, if we might have a Democrat problem with them having control of one of the parts of Congress, but after the midterms, that would no longer work. In the meantime, though, I think that is what you'll hear, that unless Trump fails to sign major legislation, it's not on him. And I think that's fair, by the way.
I want to tell everybody again, remind them what we're looking at so that they don't think that we're just sitting on this picture for no reason. It is because the President of the United States is on Capitol Hill right now, and he has just met with the two people that Marie Harf mentioned, House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Of course, the Democrats are thirsty because they think that they are about to see a flipping in terms of bicameral leadership, if not only one chamber, maybe two, in the midterm elections. So I understand that's why you're watching this so closely. But we're all watching it because it's our money that they're fighting over right now and negotiating over. And it is a fight somewhat when you consider a couple of the sticking points are a yes or no type thing. I mean, you can massage the state and local taxes a little bit like the House has done and bring back a cap maybe on property taxes. But if it's a yes or a no on Obamacare mandate, if it's a yes or a no whether you have SALT deductions at all, I mean, that's not a massaging. Those are deal breakers for some.
I think the SALT thing is a huge deal because theoretically, if you're a Republican, you have to support the idea that you can't allow these cities to have these huge budgets like New York City where they're just wasting money hand over fist. I mean, here they're spending 25% more under de Blasio in New York City than before, and everything is worse. I mean, homelessness is worse. There's more trash on the streets. The quality of living has gone down. You can't
don't even mention the subway.
Don't even mention the subway. You can't allow New Yorkers to deduct that. And I say this, and it's not in, I mean, this causes me so much pain. It's going to cost me personally money, this SALT thing. But you have to agree with the logic of it and the theory. Although I wonder, I mean, you quoted that people who make $10,000 are going to pay more
between
taxes.
$10,000 and $75,000 over the next decade.
People who make $10,000 don't pay any federal taxes
across the country. But look, if you're running, I'm speaking politically. That statistic, when Republicans said this is going to help the middle class, this is for the middle class, that statistic alone is tough to defend.
The other thing that they have to come to agreement on is when they roll in that deduction in corporate tax. And do they want to do something like what Ari Fleischer has told me recently, former press secretary for G.W. Bush? You know, maybe they do 27.5 this year and lower it down to the 20 next year. Who knows? But we're watching all of it because, again, these are our dollars that they're talking about. Tax money, tax reform, potentially the biggest type of reform we've seen since Reagan in the late 1980s. We're watching for it. We're watching for the president to come out. He's already told us once it's going well. What will he say next? Our cameras are there. Stay close. News alert, bombshell new allegations against Democratic Senator Al Franken. That senator now accused of groping and kissing a woman without her consent. She was asleep. 11 years ago. Doug McElway is live in Washington with the latest. Doug.
Hi, Harris. The accuser is Leanne Tweeden, a news anchor on KABC Radio's McIntyre in the Morning program. She's a former hostess at Hooters, a winner of the Venus International Model Search, and has done modeling work for Fredericks of Hollywood. She alleges that in December of 2006, during a USO tour, Al Franken, who was not yet then a senator, wrote a comedy skit for her and him that included lots of sexual innuendo. It also included a kiss. He allegedly asked her to rehearse the skit and the kiss. She replied, "This is not Saturday Night Live," and refused to include the kiss in the rehearsals. He allegedly persisted relentlessly, and she ultimately gave in.
He came at me, and before I even knew it, he put his hand on the back of my head and came towards me and mashed his face against my mouth and stuck his tongue in my mouth. And, I sort of pushed him back and I said, "Don't ever do that to me again." And I was so angry and I walked out of there.
She says the tour wrapped up on Christmas Eve. Exhausted, they boarded an Air Force C-17 for the trip home from Afghanistan. She says, quote, "I immediately fell asleep even though I was still wearing my flak vest and Kevlar helmet. It wasn't until I was back in the U.S. and looking through the CD of photos that we were given by the photographer that I saw this one." She alleges in this photograph that he groped me without my consent while I was asleep. "I felt violated all over again, embarrassed, belittled, humiliated," she says. "How dare anyone grab my breast like this and think it's funny?" In a statement today, Senator Franken said, "I certainly don't remember the rehearsal for the skit in the same way, but I send my sincerest apologies to Leanne. As to the photo, it was clearly intended to be funny, but wasn't. I shouldn't have done it." There is, as of yet, no corroboration that Franken grabbed her breasts, which were covered by that Kevlar vest designed to stop bullets. He most certainly made a motion to do that and appears to be touching the vest and posed for the frat boy type of photo. Harris, back to you.
Doug McElway, thank you very much. Maria Harf, I'm going to come to you first on this, not because he's a Democratic senator, but because of something you said during the commercial break. It is time for
people to stop behaving badly, right? We need to believe women. We need to hold powerful men accountable. And to this point, it's been all men who've been accused of these things. And that goes for members of any party, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, going up, members of the Senate, members of the House, all the way up to the president, who's also been accused of things. We need in this country to have a discussion. Culturally, it has crossed all party lines over the last few months. It has crossed into media. It has crossed into sports. It has crossed into comedy and entertainment. We've got a problem. We talk about this a lot, Harris. And we have to start believing people when they say this is happening and taking it seriously.
Kennedy, I'm looking back at, and Al Franken, I just want to set this straight, because people may wonder, well, was he a single guy? No, because he's been married since 1975 to the same woman, Franny. Was he in Congress at that point? No. He was in Congress 3 years later in 2009. And none of, well, the first part does, being married does, because now you've got collateral damage potentially. But this matters too. So on Twitter, as the hashtag #MeToo campaign has been going on, this is Al Franken. "Sexual harassment and violence are unacceptable. We must all do our part to listen, stand with, and support survivors." Kennedy?
Absolutely, but there's also, I think, a strata of these things, and we have to be mindful of that. There's a couple of things that stand out to me. One, I think when victims of stuff like this see stories about Harvey Weinstein and Roy Moore and Lord knows how many other names have been put forward lately, it sort of re-traumatizes them and jostles memories. That's one thing, but the problem is there's so many men right now who've been accused of so much. The most egregious stories sort of get lost in all of that, and that's really upsetting. And there's also a difference between someone being a complete buffoon like Al Franken and someone who allegedly commit rape like Harvey.
Well, he put his hands on her, and also, that's in a picture.
And also, if he stuck his tongue down her throat, I mean, that's assault as well. I think on top of everything you guys said, which I totally agree with, this also makes me think about when he said, it was supposed to be a joke. I have never understood in humor when it's okay to be homophobic, it's okay to be racist, it's okay to be sexist, that you make these jokes about groups of people, whether it's priests, whatever. When is it okay to do that and then you can't say stuff in other language?
Go ahead and watch some Richard Pryor. and he'll explain the
Or
difference.
SNL. All right, so that brings me-
but there's a big difference between someone being a comic and someone being a creep.
But
Al
he did put
Franken
his
here
hands
is
on
being
her.
a creep.
So-
A lot
so
is
Buck,
forgiven in comedy. Nothing is forgiven in sexual
I
assault.
want to ask this question. Are we seeing a tipping point? Is the line moving here?
That was actually where I was going. So yes, I believe that we are seeing a conversation that is happening now that it does have real effect on people coming forward that would not have before. I also think that if you're looking for places where there are a lot of men, particularly men who have gotten to a certain point in the power structure that they feel almost invulnerable. Hollywood's probably number one.
Yeah.
D.C., Capitol Hill, that's going to be right up there. I don't think that what we're hearing about Franken is by any means the end of this. I think it is really just the beginning. There's a lot of improper stuff that's going on.
And
in our
probably
nation's capital.
a lot of
are gonna
people,
find
to
out
your
about it.
point, yes, a lot of people who are very nervous, remembering things that they've done years ago. And when are those accusations going to come?
Well,
to
we're
light?
seeing a line move particularly on Capitol Hill right now, because there's a lot of discussion about how they're going to, within their own house on Capitol Hill, within Congress, deal with complaints of sexual harassment and misconduct, so on and so forth. We'll move on. New accusers coming forward saying that they are victims of Alabama Senator candidate Roy Moore. How Moore's campaign is responding today. Stay close.
Fox News alert, more controversy in the hotly contested Alabama Senate race. Republican Roy Moore facing 3 more accusers alleging inappropriate behavior as his attorney demanding a handwriting analysis on the yearbook belonging to another of Moore's accusers. All this is the embattled candidate firing back on many fronts, releasing testimonials from a dozen women, reaffirming his character. And this tweet at the Senate Majority Leader who's declared Moore unfit for office. Dear Mitch McConnell, bring it on. But despite the denials and defiance, the pressure building on Moore from his fellow Republicans to step aside, South Carolina's Lindsey Graham says Moore's behavior was at a minimum creepy. And he's pleading for Alabama's Republican Party to do the right thing.
He was on the no-fly list for a ball, which to me is pretty stunning. So it gives credibility to the allegations of these women. I'd like the Republican Party of Alabama to step up and fix this problem for the good of the state of Alabama and the country as a whole, and certainly for the Republican Party.
And first daughter Ivanka Trump not holding back in an interview with the Associated Press, saying, quote, "There is a special place in hell for people who prey on children. I've yet to see a valid explanation, and I have no reason to doubt the victims' accounts." And just when you think you've heard it all in this race, we have this. Politico reporting that the GOP is thinking of asking Luther Strange to resign his Senate seat to trigger a new special election. Buck, I'll go to you because you have to be thinking that everyone is sitting behind the scenes with a plan for how are we going to salvage this since every vote counts. What do you think of this latest one?
Well, I do a syndicated radio show during the week, and we have a lot of callers calling in from Alabama on this issue day in and day out. And here's what they're overwhelmingly saying about this. Let the people of Alabama vote on this issue. Let the people of Alabama choose their senator and adjudicate this through the political process. That is the way it is set up right now. There will never be legal due process here for the accused or the accusers. That's not. No one says this is going to go to trial. So then the moment you start introducing what are considered to be outsider plans to influence, even on the GOP side, I'm just saying there's a lot of pushback against that because it feels like the GOP, whether it's the GOP for the state of Alabama or the GOP taking orders from Mitch McConnell in D.C., is trying to muddy this thing up in a way that they shouldn't, trying to make it more complicated than it should be. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not an Alabama voter, but I do feel like they would like the opportunity to make this judgment call at the ballot box themselves. They don't want someone stepping in with a third-way plan.
And they may end up electing a Democrat. Doug Jones has pulled within the margin of error, basically neck and neck now, with Roy Moore. And I think that's why you see the Republican Party. I think it's mostly because of electoral politics. They're looking at these other options. But Buck is right here. I don't think it will help the national establishment in the Republican Party, who already has problems with voters out in the country, to meddle. The Democrat could win this seat here. And look, a lot of people have said, even if Doug Jones wins, he's the Democrat, and he's a very respectable candidate. Yeah. Whenever the election comes after this, the Republicans will likely take that back. So don't meddle. From a Republican perspective, long term, don't meddle in the process. A Democrat may win, but look, Roy Moore, going back to our previous segment, This is serious. We need to believe these women are on the record. When you're having to defend a yearbook and go to handwriting analysis, you're losing the battle.
I'll tell you, Louis Gohmert, representative in Texas, said he's been part as a legal representative of rape cases, sexual assault. He said 38 years are a long time to gather evidence. He said that it could take a very long time before they would ever get to an answer in the case.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, if Alabama makes the decision, Senator John McCain has said that he thinks he could lead a coalition to constitutionally make sure that Moore would not take his seat.
Oh, come on. I mean, Republicans, yeah.
Should there be a situation where it would be found that Roy Moore was guilty of something? And so McCain's idea is let Alabama choose and then let the Senate unseat. I don't, from what you're saying, Marie, and from what I think you're going to say, Kennedy, none of it really respects the voters' vote, but I don't know how.
Well, it's also wildly hypocritical of anyone in the GOP to say we don't like the outcome of this election, therefore we're going to use extrajudicial means in order to undo the election results. That's what Democrats are trying to do with President Trump, and that's why Republicans are constantly swatting them down, because it's not okay. So I understand you have a razor-thin margin, and this is not a trivial concern for someone like Mitch McConnell, who's desperately holding on to power. So they're trying to figure out some way in a Republican state to send a Republican senator to Washington in light of all of these accusations. Yeah. One of the suggestions is fire Jeff Sessions, which I think would be fantastic because he's not a good AG, and send him back to Alabama to see if he still has goodwill.
I don't think he wants to do that.
He could name a special counsel on his way out the door. There are a lot of
I think my head is about to.
That would be quite an exit.
Literally, my head is about to explode.
There you go.
Right?
All right, meantime, a new report that Democrats may be stuck in the past as they attempt to rebrand their image. Is the party's old guard shutting out fresh voices? We debate. So we are awaiting President Trump to come out to the mics at this hour. He has been meeting. You can see there he has been meeting with, we think it was Speaker Ryan and House Leader McConnell, but they're not confirming exactly who he was back there talking to. But you can bet that taxes were the first topic on everyone's minds as they met behind closed doors and tried to talk about how both houses could come together on a tax bill. They were probably talking about this issue of Roy Moore as well. I don't know that. I'm just guessing. What do you think, Buck? What do you think they're talking about there?
I mean, I'm assuming that taxes is top of the agenda. I'm not sure. From what I've seen and heard so far, it looks like Trump is taking a pretty hands-off approach to the Roy Moore situation, which I have to say I think also falls in line with what, as I said, I'm hearing, and I know a lot of others are as well, about what GOP voters in Alabama would like, which is they want more reports, more information, they want the story to be followed, but they want to have the election that they've been having, and they want this to go through, and I think Trump's trying to allow that.
Kennedy, where do you think the wiggle room is on the tax plan? I mean, when you look at the two differences between the two plans, and if you think of that as sort of the borders of what we're looking at, what do you think ends up falling by the wayside?
I don't think the individual mandate is the thing that, there's the president waving and walking by. The cameras going into a hidden corridor, perhaps to Hogwarts, and
no, it does seem like
I don't believe we're going to get any sound. And there he is again from a different angle in a different corridor.
And we got Pence in the mix, too.
Looping by, giving you the high five, and a little thumbs up, but no, we're not going to get any comments out of him.
And there's so much to discuss. I actually am more optimistic. I have no faith in Congress at all whatsoever, but I am more optimistic than some of my colleagues on the couch today, including Buck and Marie, that the Senate is going to figure out a way to do this, and they will find a middle ground in conference. They'll pass it. I think Mitch McConnell is probably exhorting the president to get involved in the Roy Moore scandal more openly and say something forcefully to try and get more out of the race.
Can I just speak to your relative lack of cynicism? I think I'm hoping what you're saying is true, actually, because if this Congress cannot get tax cuts, they can't get anything.
They should leave.
This is just going to turn into a delay pattern. This is going to be like the airline when they keep coming out saying, it's going to be another hour. It's going to be another hour.
Right, and that eventually they're going to cancel the flight.
Yeah, and eventually the flight's just not leaving. You're like, this is great. That's going to be the Congress in summary.
And however, Marie, I don't see Democrats as having some bold alternative plan to Republicans other than obstruct and resist. You've got people in the party who are leading the party who are essentially 700 years old apiece.
Well, I think that on the Senate side, I actually think there are some Democrats who would have entertained this before the Obamacare provision got put in there. I think for Democrats that really was, people like Joe Manchin, people like Joe Donnelly, I think there were folks who were saying maybe we can take a look at this, but it wasn't. Once you put Obamacare in with tax cuts, but the true question here is, what is Donald Trump saying to them? None of us, I think, believe that he is in the intricacies of policy.
He's saying
here.
Get it done.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. This is a pep rally. But a pep rally doesn't bridge the gaps between the Senate and the House version.
Yeah.
He's just saying, you guys need to do this. And they're saying,
think
yeah, our
so.
jobs are the
I
ones
don't
on the
think so.
line.
See, I don't think so because he's a deal maker. And so
but he doesn't know.
I think there's a deal to be made here.
But he doesn't know the
He
details of
definitely,
it.
he definitely believes in the corporate tax cut. There's no way that he's not a big proponent.
He absolutely knows the details.
So what is he
has
saying to the
used
Senate?
tax policy to his benefit his whole entire life. He knows the tax code in and out, like everyone in this city of New York
taxes,
knows
Okay,
the
but
tax
Melissa,
code
what
in
is
and
he
out.
saying to the Senate about the one-year delay on lowering the corporate
That he
tax?
hates it.
It's
I
bad.
think he's saying
It's a bad
Although,
move.
guys,
this is.
you
I think
can't
he's
run
saying
on corporate
sad!
tax cut.
Exclamation
One at a time.
point.
You cannot run in a midterm election on corporate tax cuts alone.
Absolutely
You
can.
can run
It will
on
not-
growth, though.
it
That
will
is
not
created
work.
by
Amen.
It's-
and
I
you
think
pass it
it's-
now. You're already at 3.5% GDP
fundamentally
growth.
disagree.
I'm agreeing with
If
Marie way
that-
too much today.
If
I
that
know.
continues,
It makes me sad because this is a populist.
How am I the only
You know what?
optimist?
We're having a
When
good
did
time,
that
and in the
happen?
meantime, as we watch this car pull in and pull away, and we keep track of what the president is doing on Capitol Hill, we're going to squeeze in a quick
Do you
break.
have
We'll
any
be right
Grey
back.
Poupon?